There's an old Chinese proverb. The beginning of wisdom is to call things by their right names. That's not easy. It takes a while. You're not born knowing those right names. You have to learn them. And when you look at yourself, you know, here I come out of the mother's womb. Who am I? Well, I'm an amnesiac. Don't know who I am. I'm exceedingly naivete. I don't know what the heck is going on in this world. I'm totally incompetent. I mean, I got to depend on everybody. And I'm very prone to mistakes. And I can hardly control anything in my body. Don't take it personally. Now there I go, huh? As I start to grow, I meet another one that kind of gets in my way. I'm always trying to satisfy my pleasures rather than my joys. Pleasures, you know, regard the body, joys regard another part of you. So here I am, born with all these handicaps. Now I'm supposed to expect to make something of myself. And so I begin, don't I? I slowly. Well, how am I going to overcome all these handicaps? No one's immune. No one is born without them. And we all have them as we're in different degrees of intensity, so to speak. Well, first of all, I have to learn the lay of the land. How do I do that? Sooner or later, I've got to make a distinction. A basic distinction that never changes. I look out on this planet, as it were, this cosmos. I realize I grew up in a city full of people and events, and so the distinction comes up. There's an order of things that I find that are not man-made. Nature, prominently. And then, because I live in a city, a community, there's an order of things that are man-made, that are not found in nature. And then there's a tussle between the two of them. And so I gradually get accustomed to living in both. And as the Western masters used to say, the most obvious thing about life is that it changes. It changes. The seasons change. Night and day changes. You change. Everything's moving, altering, huh? Transporting itself. And we got to learn how to deal with those changes. Because if we don't, we're going to get swamped. And a lot of people do. A lot of people get afraid of change, don't we? Now, is change bad? That's just the way things are. That's part of the order of things. Things grow old, things break down, things wear out. And yet things also renew, grow back. So when you look at the province of change that surrounds us and permeates us, the variety is incredible when you think about it. And you just walk out back in your yard and just see all the things that are growing there that weren't there a few weeks ago when the winter quit. So along with making that distinction between the order we find and don't make and the order we make and don't find, we have to accept a fundamental principle of life, that life changes. Now when it changes doesn't mean it's wiped out the past. No, not necessarily. Some things are. But you change all the time, but you're still the same. You're a human being. Change your mind, change your emotions, change your clothes. Yet you are the same. So here, there's a kind of paradox, isn't there? How about that? Changes are going on in me all the time. Cells are dying and being reborn. All the time. Look how much you've grown in the last few years in terms of your awareness of life, yourself, other people. You're still the same. So there's a sameness, and yet there's a difference. We call that growth. We can't always measure that growth on a yardstick because it's not tangible. It's real, but not tangible. Because it's not quantity. It's not empirically detectable. but it's discernible by our intelligence, that marvelous power that we have, which is the core of our being. Huh? This ability to know and to love. Wow. And we have it beyond all the other creatures put together. We're very special. And one day we have to recognize that. We have to recognize it in a profound way. And we have to sort of keep it as a steady attitude, because it's so easy to forget. It's so easy to forget. And so part of our problem is learning to overcome our naivete and our incompetency is to learn to use these powers that we have within ourselves, our emotions, our learning abilities, the way we handle our body. Huh? And that's what yoga came in for. So these yogis sat down one day. How can we understand and implement ways in which human beings can become more human? As Swami's master used to say, you're already divine. Go out and find out what it's like to be human. And that's what yoga is all about. We don't bow down to yoga. Yoga is not that way. It's a kind of, as I call it sometimes, a motorcycle maintenance manual. Huh? It's to enable us. And that's where its worth comes. Because if it's not, then drop it. If this sutra doesn't please you or it's not pertinent, it shouldn't be in your life. Why? You don't revere a book. You revere life. We don't genuflect to scriptures. We respect being. And so, yes, we're prone to mistakes. And gradually we discover something. Sometimes we win, sometimes we learn. That's the way I look at it. You can't help but make mistakes because you don't know everything yet. It's got nothing to do with how hard you try, how sincere you are, as Charlie Brown says. You have to learn, and the only way you can learn is through experience. You have to test yourself, you have to test the environment, and just be careful a little bit, huh? Well, you know what pain is, you know what disturbance is, you know what it means to upset the ship. So you be kind of careful, and you repair what you can. And we have something up here that's amazing too. It's called memory. You know, we all have a perfect memory. We really do. It's the retrieval part that's the hard part. The yogis knew, and by their own self-study, they knew that we don't forget anything, but we don't always remember everything we learned. So we got to do it again. But that's part of the fun too. And in that memory, it's there to help us. It's another tool. It's there. It's not there to sort of put a band around our ingenuity to restrain us in the sense, oh, you've made so many, don't even think about improving. No. It's there again to assist us. It's not there to impede us. And so the thoughts we come up with, the ideas that we retrieve, the episodes we recall, they're not there to punish us. They're not there to restrict us from the future. No, they're just to advise us. Yeah, that's what your memory is. It's your counselor. And once you change your mind about your memory that way, you've got a whole new light to look upon in terms of that memory. Ooh, a counselor. Wow. He's not there to indict you. Yes. So. But then, we've got a couple of arch enemies that are just waiting for us out there. Oh yeah. Some trickster came up with these ideas. I don't know. Someday I'm going to ask the sages who thought this one up. But I'm not talking about mosquitoes. I'm talking about others. Ah yes. We sometimes run into something called fear. Fear. Not caution. Well, caution's good. But got to be careful with fear. Fear paralyzes. Fear stops the change, stops the growth, stops the ingenuity, the inquisitivity, the curiosity, which we should all progress into the day we leave our bodies. We have to deal with fear. Now, the last thing fear wants is for you to face it, because it can't hide then. See, fear wins because it intimidates. It says, watch out. Something behind that door. So it creates and uses your imagination. It doesn't use your ideas so much, it uses your imagination, and you know what imagination can do. So it blows things out of context. So put it back in context. Yeah, if I'm on the peak of a ledge and I'm looking over, I could be a little afraid, fine, but then I'll step back. If I'm in heavy traffic, I better get off my iPhone. Just ask the police. They'll tell you all about that. So, again, what comes to our aid here? Your intelligence. It says, come here, fear. Let's take a good look at you. Is there any substance behind it? Never. Never. Sometimes we get confused, sometimes we misunderstand, and thus the fear just rises as a consequence. So let's go back and analyze. Let's go back and dialogue with life. Swami always used to say, if you're having real problems in meditation, dialogue with the mind. I'm serious. This is so much fun once you get onto it. Because it's like you have two people in you, huh? You got that part of you that's kind of restricting you, and then the other part says, come on, let's go ahead. Well, get going with the conversation. Find out why should I be afraid? Why do I hesitate? Is there a real reason? Well, then let's take care of it. So I don't want to have to carry this around. It's like carrying an open wound around all the time and saying, ouch, ouch, ouch. Let it heal. Yeah. Now the other archenemy, it's a little hard to deal with. It's called sadness. Sadness. I didn't make it. I lost. I failed. I disappointed. I embarrassed people who loved me. And you start going down the litany again, huh? Oh boy, you get heavy, heavy, heavy. And you lose your zip for life. The most dangerous thing. Stress can give you a heart attack, but sadness can kill you. In 1953, there was that research project done over in Korea, where this major physician, with the rank of major, was noticing as he was performing autopsies on soldiers coming in that there was nothing wrong with their body and they were dying all the time, between 18 and 26. He said, what's going on here? There's nothing wrong with these men. All the organs were healthy. All the organs were healthy, and yet they were dying. You can't interrogate a corpse. It's pretty hard, you know. So what he did, he sat down and tried to reflect, and gradually working on it in a hit and miss, trial and error, he began to make a sociological study, and he interviewed the deceased soldiers' companions. And then it hit him. Oh my God, he saw the common denominator. And it floored him because he was very much, you know, materially oriented as a doctor. He never realized the power of mind till he began to examine why these soldiers had died. And the common denominator was they gave up on life. They didn't think it was worth living anymore. Either due to their terror, their fear, they didn't see the meaningfulness of the war, whatever it was. He couldn't always answer that, but he listened to the conversations, the retelling of conversations by their companions, and they told him what these guys used to dwell on and talk about all the time, and he realized they slowly gave up hope. He wrote a magnificent pamphlet on this. You should read it sometime. To me, it's one of those works that will always be relevant. The enemy of sadness is hope. Hope is what pulls you into the future, so you don't stay stuck in the present or caught in the quagmire of the past. Huh? It's so important to foster that. And our nature is built out of hope, literally. You don't have to prove anything when you're alive. You just got to start following out your inclinations and watch what happens. That's the concrete implementation of hope. And then as you get a little more sophisticated and educated, you start to give it a concept, huh? Yeah, I'm going to really got an idea I'm going to put into operation. Going to finish that project by the end of the summer. I'm living out of hope. We all do, when you think about it. Huh? The nice thing about it is that we can work with it. We can give manifestation to it, and that's what we want. And then gradually, as we contend with life this way, we start to have, whether we like it or not, we start to have inner reflections and start to think about what it means to be human, humane, and what it means not to be. And suddenly we realize that an act of love, an act of hope, a tendency to want to fulfill a desire, all of these indicate something in you called, what I call, fundamental creativity. Our essence is to be creative beings, to create the kind of world we want by first working with ourselves. You know, the old saying, if you want to change the world, don't go change it out there, change yourself and watch what happens. Huh? Because there's it's almost like a magical thing. As I begin to work with myself and try to understand my powers and how to employ them and deploy them so that I can see the benefits for myself and those whose lives I touch, I start to get a different perspective on life. It's less narrow. It's less just me. There's a broadening, huh? And there's an enjoyment. I had a hard time. I grew up alone. I was extremely selfish. It was very hard for me to understand how if you share something, you're not losing. I just didn't get it. I didn't have brothers or sisters. I had these big things called aunts and uncles all the time. And they always used to eat my dessert on me. It took me a long time. I'm still learning. But that's also what the environment's for. That's what nature's for. That's what the community is meant to draw you out so that you can release this power of learning and love. That's the only thing that's going to make you happy. That's where the oneness comes in. You got all kinds of, these psychics running around, got to feel one, got to feel one. Relax, and get involved with life, and then you'll understand what it's all about. Yeah. Okay. And then finally what happens is you start to name things as they really are. Huh? The beginning of wisdom, to call things by their right names, because you have a clarity now that's not incompetent, that's not short-sighted, that's not naive. You've got the bruises to prove that. You're past that initial learning now. You're beginning to be at ease with yourself in varying circumstances. Huh? You're like a gyroscope. You can tilt and adjust. You know when to withdraw, and that's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of prudence. You know when to assert. And if you can't always get your way, so I'll live with it. And I don't have to hold grudges. Because why weigh myself down? Who wants to? Now we've entered a different era too. Something that Aristotle and Shankara didn't have in their life. We're in the electronic information age. Boy, things are moving. Talk about change. Motion that we brought up earlier. Things are really moving today. And we can get caught up in that in ways that we don't even know we're being pulled along, and suddenly we start to feel consequences, and they're not always healthy. We spell it S-T-R-E-S-S. Huh? The constrictions of life that we don't seem to be able to manage. And yet we got to deal with them, we got to work with them, because that's part of our lifestyle. It's part of who we're becoming. And who we are becoming is something that is a never-ending implementation. Not too long ago, I had a young man come and see me. About 25. He had a rough childhood. Little brain damage. And he'd sit there and he'd tell me about all his bipolar problems. Or his Asperger's problems. You know. He'd go down the list. I mean, he knew them better than the psychologists. And he'd keep reminding me of what he was. And I'd listen, and I'd listen, and I'd listen. And gaining a little rapport, I finally said to him, well, so that's who you are? What do you mean? Well, you just listed everything about yourself. And all I heard was things that required therapy. Well, that's what they told me. Notice, that's what they told me. I said, you willing to settle for that? Well, you know, I've had problems. So, who hasn't? You've slipped. You forget. You don't always articulate. Huh? You're not an orator. So what? How many people are? So are you going to allow them to tell you who you are, and thus you're going to keep yourself there because they've just explained to you what your nature is really about? Well, what else do I have? I said, look, you got through community college. They told you would never do it. You did it. You've held down jobs. You've learned to respect animals. Before you were afraid of them. So we went down all the things that he discovered he could do and relate to life, and I said, isn't that an indication of who you are and what you could be? Why do you keep rehearsing what they told you? Because all that's going to do is keep them wealthy. Why don't you start to think, what else could I be? So I had to provoke them. I had to get them to think that way. Because so many of us get caught without knowing it. Well, you know, I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, and I didn't have the chances other than, well, come on, stop that, will you? You're reinventing yourself back in the past where you don't exist or live, and you're trying to live back there. Don't do it. Ask yourself, well, look what I've got, now let's do something with it. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. If you're going to listen to what other people tell you, that's like, you know, they're going to say that's all you can be. Well, it sounds like the Army's propaganda. But you are more than that, huh? You don't know how far you are. And occasionally you read something. Ooh. You read something about, say, a mystic, whatever that is, or a sage, or a master. And somehow something about those sayings resonate with you. And there's a momentary enjoyment because there's a recognition of truth. There's something in you that echoes what that statement said. Who was it that said that? Then you read about his life or her life, and wow. Is this possible? Or is that just a freak, just a unique individual? Then you realize maybe, and that's what yoga tries to do. It wants to spark your potentials. That's all. It leaves it up to you. I think most of us learn to appreciate that. You set the pace. You set the intensity. You're not here to compete. It's not what it's about. And you don't set up impossible standards. I will make samadhi in 2 weeks. No. Well, you'll miss the fun of getting there. I don't want to miss a trick. So I told Swamiji one day, don't touch me. I want to learn the hard way. He just roared. But the point is, hey, there are things out there, there are people in your midst, and yet you're going to bump into that are going to spark things in you, provided you have the eyes and ears to be open. So what is your perspective on life? Or are you going to get caught in stress? No. And you want to be running around trying to do 18 things when you can really only handle 4. Mothers are very good at that, I've noticed. I admire them, but I've seen them just wear themselves out. We always have Mother's Day, don't we? To celebrate all her great efforts to take care of us. Yeah. So, if it's been done in the past, we can do it again. Because when you think about it, whatever has come about in the community had to come out of the inner person. It was an idea at one time. And so these men and women refused to give up. They were tenacious and bold. And they took on the opposing crowds and they made it. They may not have always gotten the right recognition, but they did it. They did it. So, we have to dream. That's very important. We have to dream of what we want for ourselves. And don't punish yourself if you aren't succeeding yet. No. Take your time. If it's worth pursuing the dream, you got to give it time. And you may have to realize one day when you get to a certain level, you know, I've got to change the direction. So, change it. Because you see now, and you wouldn't have seen unless you made the effort to get to that point. And sometimes that happens. And sometimes you just want to experiment. I'm going to do this up to this point and just see if I can get there. Hey, I did, fine. That's all. That's all I wanted to know about myself. I used to do that all the time with sports. Bowling, tennis, golf. I got to a level, I said, that's all I want. I did it. Fine. So, each of you are composing a biography. I can't compose it for you, nor can your beloved. You have to do it. You're meant to show the diversity, the ambiance, the wisdom that's in the divine order of things. We don't know what that is yet. One day you'll experience it when you finally go and cross over into a higher state of consciousness. Then you begin to see. And you'll begin to understand all the zigzags you had to take to get there. And you won't regret, no, you see, that was important. I needed that experience. Huh? Right or wrong, nice or not nice, I still needed it because it got me. It kept me going. Pain can be an inspiration, believe it or not. I don't foster it necessarily, but it can be. Huh? We have to recognize its role. It's there not to punish us, to prove us wrong. It's just say, hey, wake up. Are you doing it the right way? And as Finbar the leprechaun said to the Buddha one day, when the Buddha said, you know, all life is suffering, Finbar stayed back and said, really? All life is the art of possibilities. Wait till you hear the article that's going to come out soon on that one. Okay, now, what can we say here? I just wanted to talk a little about perking up. As you overcome and remove your amnesia, and discover who you are, As you begin to stop being so naive about life and getting banged up all the time and bruised and understand how things are, even if they're crooked. As you begin to work on some of your capacities and your interests and discover that, hey, I can improve. As you begin to satisfy yourself both at the pleasurable level and also at the joyful level. You need them both. You don't leave the body behind. Now you're understanding what the path of spirituality is all about. The path of spirituality is the path of becoming human in its fullest extent. It's learning how to be in time and yet beyond time. Because an idea actually is beyond time. It doesn't corrode over time, like everything else. And one day, as you continue in your path, because it's built in you already, you will step across. And you'll learn to have a foot on each side of the barrier like he did. He wasn't interested in building a big organization. When I've reflected back in the 60s and 70s, when everybody, all the Eastern thought was coming in, we're all getting caught up in it, and TM and everything else, I noticed that of all the major, you might say, prominent teachers from the East, they all had organizations much larger than his. I asked him one day, I said, "You're not interested in numbers?" He said, "No. I'm interested in finding my students." Because our tradition is trying to bring you to the culmination. All of you are meant to complete the mission and thus discover the fullness of life. That's what he was interested in doing. And along the way, he built a few things. And then he turned them over. Kept nothing for himself. It was fun building it. One night, when he was building the hospital in India, which they told him was impossible to do, because there was no industry up there. Where are you going to get all the girders? Where all the... He did. He did it in 4 years, which should have taken him 12. And he had his jogging suit on. He said, "Just, Effie, did you see what I'm doing out the end? Come on with me." So he took Davey, me, and a couple of people, and we walked out, and it was about dusk. And we got down to the corner, and he started yelling at the foreman. "Hey, you're lazy. Come on, get going. You should have had this complete." This one corner of a room at the building next to the street, all it had up was the 2x4s. It should have had the sheetrock up, should have had the windows up, but it wasn't. And he just read the riot act to these guys. I said, "Yeah, okay." Then we went back and had chai. Next morning, I'm walking along, I'm walking the same corner. The sheetrock is up, the windows are in. But India workers don't work at night. Come on now. So I go back up to him. I said, "Swami, remember last night?" "Yeah." "You showed me that corner of that building?" "Yeah." "There was nothing up." "Well, this morning I walked by, everything's up." And he looked at me and shrugged his shoulders. "I just had to use help." I said, "That's interesting. I wish I could have been there. We're watching all these invisible hands putting up everything." Wow. So that's my teacher. So in an emergency, you'll get help, gang. You'll get help. Don't worry, you'll get help. So, be careful now. As I said, there's a subtle enemy slipping into all our lives, and it's called stress. Don't get rushed. Yes, some things have to be done with speed. I grant you that, but you stay in control. You stay in the center. You're the steersman. And it's so easy to get caught up into it, and you forget what's hurting you. And so I'd like to read you this as my final thought. Have you ever watched kids on a merry-go-round? Or listened to the rain slapping on the ground? Have you ever borrowed or followed a butterfly's erratic flight, or gazed at the sun into the fading night, you better slow down. Don't dance so fast. Time is short and the music won't last. Did you run through each day on the fly? When you ask, how are you, do you hear the reply? When the day is done, do you lie in your bed with 100 next chores running through your head? You better slow down. Don't dance so fast. Time is short, the music won't last. Ever told your child, we'll do it tomorrow, and in your haste, not see his sorrow? Ever lost touch, let a good friendship die, because you never had time to call and say hi? You better slow down. Don't dance so fast. Time is short. The music won't last. And when you run so fast to get somewhere, you miss half the fun of getting there. When you hurry and worry through your day, it's like an unopened gift thrown away. Life is not a race. Do take it slower. Hear the music before the song is over. So let's meditate.